Hi everyone, it's Paul Tilley, and today I'm giving you a short preview of the final exam. I have posted the final exam preview for LW1230 Business Law right in the news section of the course, so you should be able to see that there. And here, I'll just work through it just in case you have any misunderstandings, or see if we can resolve any misunderstandings. The final exam is what's called a comprehensive exam. So all the course material is going to be covered. However, I do finer point it a little bit more than just all the course material. The focus of the material will be on units 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so that is the material that we've covered post midterm. The format for the exam will be two parts. There will be 50 multiple choice questions, and we're worth 70%, so they're 1 point something each. And there will be 3 short answer questions in space provided. Now, here's where the exam, where I fine point, well, what is the exam covering? Okay, the 50 multiple choice questions come from across the course. So this is why I use the word course comprehensive. This means all of the material we've covered is subject to the multiple choice questions. Now, you've already done a lot of multiple choice questions in the first 2 exams, so you will, find that a lot of the material there that you've found before, or you've discovered before, you did well with that. So take a look at that previous material we've covered from the point of view of, what are some of the major points there. From the new material too that we've covered, the 4 to 6, I would suggest to you that the bulk of the multiple choice questions will come from units 4 through 6. Okay, but there will be some spillover. Part B of the exam consists of 3 short answer questions. Now, these questions are going to be drawn from a pool, they're basically a variety of them that people will get. They will focus on post-midterm objectives, okay? So that will be the core of the questions. The core of the questions will cover the material in units 4 to 6. I have outlined the key objectives that we've covered since the midterm. So there's 15 of them there. You got to understand the concept of agency, the agency relationship, how it's created, basically how it's used, and how it ends. So those would be the 3 points with regards to agency that you should be very aware of. We should describe the responsibilities of the principal and agent. We talked about the fiduciary duty, for example, of to act on one's behalf in the best interest of the principal in the case of the agent. And in case of the principal has to be responsible to ensure that the agent has the authority to do the things that the agent is doing. So be aware of that. We've talked about that, and we'll do that in our review. Explain the concept of and distinguish between the concept of a sole proprietorship, partnership, and a corporation. So when we're talking about there, we're talking about really the 3 forms of business setup. You need to be familiar with the methodology for a sole proprietorship, partnership, and a corporation, and the general pluses and minuses, the advantages, disadvantages, some of the concerns, the processes, and why people would pick one over the other. Differentiate between the limited and unlimited liability. Okay, we need to talk about what we mean by this, and what is this concept of a limit to liability, and what can you lose? What are some of the things? And effectively, the limit to liability limits you to your percentage of ownership in the business. So if you put $1 million into the business, the worst that could happen is you'd lose $1 million. And the unlimited liability means that the liability extends past the business to you personally. So this could be a much more detrimental to you in the case you get sued, because not only could you lose what you've invested in your business, but it could affect your personal assets as well. Okay, and discuss the personal tax implications of the basic method of carrying on business. We talked about how taxation is addressed in each, and basically the sole proprietorship and partnership is taxed as if it's in the individual's hands, whereas a corporation is taxed as a corporation. Corporations tend to have lower rates of tax. We talked about a limited partner and a general partner. A limited partner is a partner who is limited to their liability. But a general partner is one that is not limited to their liability. And normally, a business has to have at least one general partner. One of the partnership type businesses has to have at least one type of general partner whose liabilities extend beyond their investment in the business into their personal. Compare the advantages and disadvantages of each method of carrying on business. Again, similar to what we've looked at before, you should be aware of the pluses and minuses. Discuss some of the difficulties encountered in engaging in international contracts. We talked about international business, and we've seen that, yeah, that can be a little bit problematic with regards to cross-border and rules and the like. Labor legislation, how it affects employment contracts. We talked about that from an employment point of view and what the legislative restrictions are or the legislative minimums are and how it impacts employees and employers. Termination of employment. We talked about this issue of, okay, we can hire someone. How do we terminate the relationship? What are some of the implications there? And we talk about the different types of termination: dismissal with cause, dismissal without cause, notice, constructive dismissals, wrongful dismissals. You should be familiar with each of those terminologies. 12, we look at the damages for wrongful dismissal and analyze the employment law in terms of this. What are some of the implications to a business owner or an employer in the case of wrongful dismissal? And what does the employment law say with regards to that? 13, we briefly discussed the laws and regulations that affect Canadians when they do business internationally. Again, similar to the one I put up above there. We've talked about that in terms of doing international business. The challenge is that the laws apply to the region you're dealing with. So which jurisdiction that the laws would apply, the laws that you're working under would be very much dependent on where you're dealing business and what your contract says with regards to whose rules apply. We look at some of the emerging trends in Canadian intellectual property law, and we've talked about this concept of intellectual property. What do we mean by intellectual property, and what are some of the laws surrounding it? So 15 really looks at it even more closely, and it says, what are some of the issues with regards to copyrights, patents, and trademarks? And we talked about what the purpose of copyright is, how it's enforced, what are some of the benefits of it, what are some of the issues surrounding it, particularly from the point of view of electronic patents. We differentiate between copyright and patent. Copyright is really a work of art or writing or something like that, whereas a patent is more of a practical product that can have some use. And there the government will give you effectively a monopoly on that product for a period of 20 years if it's unique and original. And these patents serve two masters, really. It protects the individual who built the product, but it also encourages businesses to be innovative in order to be able to take advantage of patents in order to reap a return on their investment. And we looked at trademark law as well, logos, these sorts of things, and what sort of protection that provides. So those are the key issues that you really want to look at. Now, keep in mind that these objectives are just post-midterm, right? This is not covering the entire course. This is really focusing on the things that happened since the last midterm. And these will be the primary things that will appear here in these short answer questions and will certainly be a good chunk of the multiple choice questions.